Okay, good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Agenda Setting Work Session for Tuesday, March 18th, 2025. It's 9:02 a.m. My name is Ty Mentzer, Chair of the Board. To my left, Vice Chair Commissioner Wayne Fournier, and our other three commissioners, Commissioners Klaus, Grant, and Commissioner Mejia participating on Zoom. We have County Manager Leonard Hernandez and Assistant County Manager Josh Cummings, Clerk of the Board Amy Davis. First up is, we have a second review of the agenda for this afternoon and then a first review of next week's agenda. So we'll start with this afternoon's agenda. And we have the meeting called to order at 2 p.m., Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Mejia, land acknowledgement, approval of agenda. Just flipping through these standing items, Women's History Month proclamation.
Good morning, Commissioners. Amy Davis, Clerk of the Board. We will be joined this afternoon by Ashley Whitley, the Program Manager for the Washington Center for Women in Business, Angela Jefferson of the League of Women Voters, and Margaret Ebby of the Olympia Choir, who will be singing for us in the atrium area this afternoon. In addition to them, we will have the local Optimist Group, Junior League representatives, and YWCA representatives.
And are there certain of those that are going to be speaking and certain that aren't?
Yes, Ashley Whitley from the Washington Center for Women in Business, Angela Jefferson from the League of Women Voters, and Margaret of the Olympia Choir will be presenting.
Okay. Questions about the proclamation presentation? Hearing none, we'll go, the next item would be public comment and then county manager's update. Anything you're preparing, county manager?
Nothing to report at this time.
Okay, we have consent agenda 5A, item Auditor's Office, resolution adjusting threshold value for software assets. We have a typo on it.
We have Darren from the auditor here to present, but we covered it last week and answered any questions from commissioners. Thank you, Darren, for being here.
Yeah, given the number of items, and there weren't a lot of items that I remember having, I'll probably just ask for, if there's questions from the board, rather than having a represent. Anything for Darren regarding the software assets issue? Nope. Thank you, Darren. Next item up is setting public hearing to change precinct boundaries, also an auditor's office item.
We have Tilly from the auditor's office here. And again,
there was a public, there was a board briefing on the details of this one
Correct.
before even the review last week.
Correct. Good morning, Commissioners. Tilly Napsey-Polar, Elections Manager. So the team has been working on precinct maintenance in regards to conversations that the Commissioner just talked about. These changes with our precincts are based on registered voters that are reaching maximum capacity per registered voter, and that's by state law. We're reaching about 1,500 voters for a couple of our precincts. So we're looking at expanding or separating those precincts. We also have a city annexation that we are working on, and then of course, we're always looking at improving precinct boundaries. It's not too much, it's about 5,000 registered voters out of our 200,000 registered voters in Thurston County. Any questions for me?
Any questions for Tilly? Nope, straightforward, thank you.
Excellent.
Good job to your team on that one. 5C is Central Services, Parks and Rec, Lease Agreement Amendment 4.
Morning, Commissioners. Bruce Rohraner, I'm Central Services Director, here with two leases. The next two items, both taking on the leases at the Israel Road Sheriff's Building purchase, and ready to answer any questions.
No changes from last week, so.
No changes from
Okay,
last
any
week.
questions for Bruce on the two leases connected to the new building? All right, thank you. Next up, E, Associate Development Organization Designation. Jenica Machado, good morning.
Good morning, Jenica Machado, Economic Development Manager. There have been no changes since last week or the e-brief that was sent January 30th. And I'm happy to take any questions.
And there's no changes in this item's re-upping our designation of the Economic Development Council. Any questions for Jenica?
Chair, if I
Yeah.
can, I believe this is the last board meeting where Jenica will be wearing a Thurston County jersey. She will be leaving us on the 20th and heading over to the city of Olympia. So just wanted to honor her for her hard work and years of service. I know there are several things that she has accomplished, but overall, just a wonderful team member. And join me in giving her a round of applause.
Thanks, Jenica.
Thank you, I appreciate my time here. It's been great to learn from everybody. And I'll still be working with most people, just with a different hat on. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, next up is F, interagency agreement between WSU and Thurston County.
Good morning, Commissioners. No changes from last week or the debrief that was sent on February 7th. This is just the annual MOU agreement that we maintain with WSU Thurston County Extension.
All good, questions or concerns for Ashley on WSU? Nope, hearing none. We'll go to the next item. Resolution for countywide planning policies update.
This is the resolution amending the countywide planning policies to include the updates related to tribal coordination. There will be a briefing at 10 o'clock, joined by Thurston Regional Planning Council to talk about implementation of those policy updates.
Okay, so this is moving forward, consent this afternoon, but we'll get a little bit more detail on the next steps from TRPC. Thank you very much. Any questions for Ashley on that one?
When's that briefing? It's today at 10 o'clock?
Yeah.
Yes.
During this? Okay.
Yep. Thank you. That brings us to H, Emergency Services Amendment to Subrecipient Contract for Thurston County Special Operations Rescue Team, or SORT.
Absolutely. I'll kick it off with the theme. There are no changes from last week in terms of the amendment, and it's for $9,300 increase to the SORT team, entirely grant funded.
All right, grant funded, increase to SORT. Questions from the board? Nope, thank you, Ben.
Absolutely.
Next up, also your item, Physician Professional Services Agreement for Special Weapons and Tactics.
Additionally, no changes from last week on this contract.
Questions on item I?
I really wanted Josh to say on the last one, what sort of things will you be purchasing with the $9,000? You missed an opportunity.
It's rare that that happens.
I know.
All right, any questions on I? No? Thank you. Let's go to J. 2025 Private Ambulance Business License Renewal.
Again, no changes with the applications that were submitted, and EMS Council has supported these applications.
Okay, approving ambulance services.
Yep, this is the business license
Right.
component. Yep.
Okay. Questions for Ben on the ambulance service licenses? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Item K is a human resources item, resolution to adopt a couple of classifications related to the communications team.
Good morning, Commissioners. Maria Ponte, HR Director. I actually have 5 items this morning, and
Okay.
so I can run through them quickly. Only
yeah.
one of the 5 had a follow-up. So the first one is to adopt a new classification, Chief Communications Manager, reclassify a Public Information Specialist, eliminate a Public Information Specialist. And the results of those movements is a $58,000 savings to the general fund. The second item is to create a new classification in Public Health and Social Services. That is a laboratory technician. They would reclassify a current FTE, so it's a cost neutral request. The next 2 items are related to personnel policies. The first one is to repeal an obsolete pay plan that's referred to as the MTP pay plan. Some of the provisions of the plan that are currently active will be incorporated into the personnel policies themselves. And we've talked at great length about updating the personnel policy. We've reviewed those several times. So unless you have any questions there. And then the final item is a proposed ordinance amending the Thurston County Code related to the Thurston County Citizens Commission on salaries for elected officials. The update here was that we made a very simple modification to the ordinance itself that highlights we would, in addition to professional personnel management experience, that somebody with labor experience would be considered. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any further questions.
Any questions from the board on any of the HR items? Just K through O. All right, thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
Item P is information technology, renewal of interpersonal frequency, hosting and support.
Hi, good morning. Sherry Young, IT Director. I presented nothing different last week than this is the renewal of our website. Interpersonal frequency provides support and hosts our website.
Okay. Interpersonal frequency is the name of the.
Yeah.
Last week I was like, God, I've never heard that term before. Is that
It's
some
the-
new piece of jargon I haven't?
We call them IF.
Any questions on the IT item? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Q is amendment number 2 to Washington State Department of Health Consolidated Contract.
Chair, just a note, this is amendment number 2 to CONCON.
Yeah.
Amendment number 1 will be added to the agenda of March 25th. The two items were neck and neck in the process. Amendment 2 just happened to make it over the finish line first.
Okay.
So there's no impacts to them going out of order, amendment 2 and then amendment 1.
Okay, good to know. Yeah. Other questions for anybody regarding the Department of Health contract? Nope, all right, let's just move on. Agreement with Catholic Community Services. See Marcus here, right?
I was waiting in the back row, sorry. Mark Moffett, Public Health and Social Services. This is the contract with Catholic Community Services. We do an annual RFP, and they were the only ones to apply this year. And there are no changes from last week when I presented. The only question from me is, it looks like I'm on consent and department, and I know Commissioner Klaus wanted it on consent, so. I mean,
Wanted
excuse me,
on department, yeah, so
We gotta
this just hasn't been stricken off of consent, Amy.
It needs to be removed and then the letters moved up.
Okay. Then you're good, we don't need to repeat it at department, if that's the only item we have, unless there's questions from the board on our agreement with Catholic Community Services. This is Veterans Shelter. Okay, thanks, Mark.
Thanks.
Okay, that will be a department item, not consent. Let's go to item S, amendment to hazardous weather contracts. Another PHSS item. Tom Webster, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. So no changes from the item last week. We did follow up and provide, not sure if you've received it yet, we have an email brief coming on kind of the funding sources for office housing and homeless prevention, especially around document recording fees. Also, I think there was a discussion last week around contingencies. There's not a separate contingency in the contract. It is something the Hazardous Weather Task Force is discussing, is contingencies. We're working on that. It's primarily a staffing issue of having program managers available to staff, especially for Sergio's. So we're working with Interfaith to see if we can come up with some plans with the Hazardous Weather Task Force. But there's nothing built specifically into the contract. But happy to answer any other questions if there's other questions from last week that I missed.
Questions on item S regarding hazardous weather contracts? No. Okay, let's go to item.
Thank you.
Commissioner McGee, were you good on hazardous weather? Okay. Item T, amendment to Homes First Affordable Housing Development Contract.
Morning, Commissioners. Alex Purse, Affordable Housing Program Manager. I have next two items, both contracts with Homes First, one for a property in Olympia using 1406 funds for rehab of a property they own, And then the other one is for a home they own in Tumwater for a community development block grant. These items are the same as last week when I presented, but happy to answer any questions.
Questions on the Homes First items, that's T and U.
Thank you so much.
Item V, interagency agreement with Puget Sound Partnership for on-site sewage systems maintenance activities. Okay, well, let's just look at that real quick. We had the motion is to execute an interagency agreement between Thurston County and PSP in the amount of $91,500 for financial incentives aimed at increasing on-site septic maintenance activities across all shellfish growing area watersheds, to include installation of tank risers, small maintenance grants for low-income homeowners, and authorizing the PHSS director to execute the agreement.
There were no change,
Say that again.
there were no changes to this item.
Any questions on item V? I think that was straightforward. Thank you. All right, we'll move on. W, request for proposals for environmental mitigation site maintenance contract. Public Works.
Good morning, Commissioners, County Manager. This is a simple item. This is just requesting services to maintain mitigation sites that are a result of capital projects. Nope.
Any questions on item W for Matt? Nope, okay. WX, resolution call for sealed bids for this project. It's long.
Yeah, this is a long one. And the reason it's long is because it's two different projects.
Okay,
So we got two projects awarded to us through the Highway Safety Improvement Program. We have received permission from WashDOT, who is the administrator of federal funding, to go ahead and advertise these in a combined contract to provide various safety improvements throughout the county.
item X, no questions. Go to item Y, resolution and call for sealed bids for 2025 pavement preservation supplemental overlay.
Correct. This is a project on Old Highway 9 that will start at Old Highway 99, sorry, lot 9's there, and extend about a mile west.
Any questions on the overlay? Nope, okay, moving on. Item Z, resolution call for sealed bids for Shawn Drive at unnamed tributary to Dempsey Creek Fish Passage Project.
This project was prioritized through our Fish Passage program. It'll be replacing a 3-foot culvert with a 33-foot prefabricated bridge.
When is that gonna be done? Any
This spring.
spring? Okay, cool. Any questions on that project? Sealed bids, okay. Then we're up to item AA, WashDOT Agency Hall Road Detour Agreement for Yelm Loop Phase 2.
So the Washington State Department of Transportation is preparing to advertise the Yelm Loop Phase 2 project this summer. So this agreement is a result of WashDOT reaching out to the county, wanting to use some of the county roads as a detour route to facilitate some of the construction of that project.
Questions? Nope, okay. Thanks
For now.
All right. BB, reappointment to act, so we have actually a whole string of appointments. So I'm just gonna cover those together unless there's questions. We have appointment to Agritourism Advisory Committee, John Borden. Robbie Rutledge to Agritourism Advisory. Nicole Sake to the Civil Service Commission. A Fair Board member removal, and we have information that was provided to the board on that item. That is a new item, so if there's questions there, we can address it. Item FF is Solid Waste Advisory Committee. Kelly Green as the Olympia's designated representative. Bob Isle as a Port of Olympia's designated representative. and Jane Appling as a resident representative. That one's a little different, right? Because the board would be making that appointment versus the jurisdictions. And then we've got two more. Solid Waste Advisory Committee, David Nightingale as private business representative. And then finally, Greg Stevens to the Veterans Advisory Board. These have all been discussed, other than that one item on Fair Board. They've all been previously discussed and reviewed. Any questions from board members on that set of appointments? Nope, Commissioner Grant's good. Everybody good? All right. Looks like those are all straightforward and moving forward. Let's go to the voucher list, KK. We have, again, I'll cover these together unless there's questions. We have January 6th, January 13th, January 20th, January 27th, February 3rd, and February 10th for the catch-up voucher list.
Question,
Yeah.
in voucher list, January 27th.
Yeah.
Can you speak to the email sent out?
Yeah, we followed up to that question on the amount there. That the amount is larger than what we normally see because it included the purchase of the building located at 1111 Israel Road, which is the new sheriff's office building.
I think you and I were wondering about that, so that explains that. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Then we have Central Services Department item 6A, which is contract award for Thurston County scaled back courthouse hill renovation. Morning, Tom.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tom Stremke, Capital Project Manager. Just a quick update, this is where we're at based on our discussion from a year ago where we scaled back the renovations at the courthouse. We reviewed the documents with stakeholders, we got the plans ready. Now we're asking for your authorization to proceed with the contract with Mortensen for $5.5 million to continue the renovations at the scaled back version. I'm here to answer any questions.
Questions for Tom? Okay,
No question, just a huge thank you to Tom, Rick, Bruce, and all our stakeholders. This represents a lot of togetherness, compromise, and focus on the bigger vision to move operations forward. So thank you for all your hard work.
Item 7A, we covered under consent regarding Catholic Community Services. We'll have commissioner reports as item 8, and then adjourning for a public hearing at 3:30. Public hearing to consider application of Dana Passage Water System for a non-exclusive franchise for a water distribution system in Thurston County rights-of-way.
Just the only thing, the update is that we still have not received any public comment on this. I expect this to be a very quick briefing.
And then the second public hearing is the same type of issue with regard to Woodard Place Water Company.
Ditto.
Okay, no public comment yet, so those could be brief, but we'll go through that process. And that will bring to conclusion the 18th. We have a Transportation Benefit District meeting, correct?
Yes.
We've already reviewed that agenda last week, so we're not doing that again. Okay, then let's pull out the proposed agenda for March 25th. These are first review of these items. I guess I just have 2 copies by accident. Okay, meeting called to order, and again, for public information, this is kind of a meeting, kind of off our basic schedule because it's sort of a reschedule of the first meeting in April, and there's a lack of quorum there because of board members. So being out of town, so we're gonna have that meeting on the 25th. So March 25th, we will have a meeting, business meeting, and then the next meeting would be April 15th. Perfect, thank you, Amy. Okay, so next week's business meeting called to order 2 p.m. Pledge of Allegiance led by District 2, which is Commissioner Grant. Standing items there, land acknowledgement, approval of agenda, public comment, county manager update, and then we'll have consent agenda item 4A, contract award for ballot processing center project, replacement of audiovisual equipment.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Commissioners. Tony Shaw, Capital Project Manager with Central Services, and Tilly's back.
Tilly Napati-Polar, Auditor's Office.
So we come before you this morning because we found ourselves in a unique situation with the ballot processing center under construction, which began in January. The election staff quickly realized that the audio-visual equipment that they've been using for the almost, 15 years probably, was extremely outdated, and honestly, parts of it were broken. And after we started building, we realized in the new design of this large facility, the area where this equipment will be used for training and during the election is gonna be almost 100 feet long and very wide, about 66 feet wide. And that presented an opportunity for us to rethink how we are gonna do the trainings and the video and all of the equipment needs for up to 100 staff during a large election. And so we went out and looked at what was available with the state cooperative contract. Desco Audio Video, who has a long history working with the county and understanding our needs, was on that contract and put together this proposal. And this is what we are before you today to ask to move forward with. And I'm here for questions.
Commissioner Mejia.
Thank you. What fund is this coming from? Is this coming from the amount that we set aside for the
Correct,
processing?
the public safety sales tax. This is a portion of that, so.
Perfect, okay. That was it, thank you.
But this wasn't previously budgeted, this is.
No, it was budgeted, so that's a great question. When we went out for bid on the building itself, we realized due to the election needs of continuing election operations throughout the year, we needed to get that portion of it out as quick as possible to meet the construction deadlines and particularly the phase one need, which is the end of May, to bring in for the April election. And so to do that, we had to decide to phase parts of the project. And so I will be coming back to you guys in the next month or two for a couple of the other phases. Examples of that would be our generators, our security fencing, and some other items. And that was the only way we were gonna be able to allow the elections team to meet their election dates and stay and provide all of the project needs.
Tony, maybe what we can do offline is work on that with Rick and Bruce, just to get an overview of the different phases. And then they can have that information so they can see the complete picture.
Okay, understood.
But this is a change within a previously approved budget. This is already, or this is something outside of that, like.
I wouldn't say it's a change. All of these phases have been budgeted under the $10 million public safety sales tax allotment for the auditor's election security. But to Leonard's point, we will definitely, I'll put together probably an e-brief or however Leonard chooses us to do that, to get you guys those numbers and that kind of timeline. Is that?
Yeah, different phases of the same project.
Yeah, correct.
Thank you, Tony.
Anything else for the auditor team? No? All right, thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Item B is proclamation for National Library Week.
For this proclamation, we have invited our Timberland Regional Library representatives and Cheryl Haywood, the Executive Director.
This is a consent item, so she might give public
Yes,
comment during our public comment period.
Yes.
Okay, to highlight the things, okay. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? All right. Item C, 2025 Lodging Tax Awards.
Enter Ellen Murphy with a dramatic entrance.
Great entrance.
Double duty.
Double duty today.
Thank you. Yes, Ellen's helping us out in the recording right there, so thank you so much for being here.
Not a problem. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. The item today before you, you received an e-brief both on January 6th and February 28th. The Lodging Tax Advisory Committee met on February 13th and the 28th to distribute the $150,000 for applications here in 25. Of the 23 applications, the LTAC recommended funding 16. They came to that decision of the average scores being 50% or more based off of the scoring rubric from the advisory committee. So, plus the Yelm Chamber of Commerce event. So on the 25th, we'll be looking for final approval of those recommended amounts.
Commissioner Mejia.
Thank you. Thank you for the e-brief information. I'm wondering, out of the 16 who applied, did that conclude, like, was that everyone, I guess I'm saying is?
We received 23 applications.
23 applications?
Yep.
So who did not get funding?
I don't have the list in front of me. I can provide that to you.
So there'd be 7.
Came up with scoring criteria, and then based on those scores, we came up with a bottom line cutoff so that we could focus on the ones that, there were a couple outliers that at the bottom did not score high amongst anybody except for there was one, like the Yelm Chamber one had a couple people that scored it higher while others people scored it lower. So we gave that some additional consideration and we're able to carve out a little bit of funding for that one.
Commissioners, we can share the full list so you can see at a glance what were the 16 recommended, the 7 that didn't make that cut.
And I apologize for not asking earlier.
That's okay.
That information.
I had some notes upstairs and it's not in front of me, but I seem to remember being curious, maybe it's question for Commissioner Fournier, but there was like a criteria where it was like the percentage of the points they got out of 100 or whatever, and then that percentage of their their total ask was applied, which seemed, and that struck me as odd because it's like then people that kind of like were over ambitious in their ask got rewarded for that versus people that are kind of like, hey, I want to ask for the absolute minimum I need so that I make sure I get it, and then they got penalized for that.
Well, we talked about that,
Yeah.
and we said that we can't use that again next year.
Okay.
Because people would game it, but the way it worked out, like, we were just playing with it, and it seemed like
Seemed like
kind
it
of
fit.
an okay way to do it, and we'd never done it before, and then we applied that equation, and it all laid out nearly perfectly for the allotments, and so we were like.
As long as you guys were aware, because yeah, it seemed like that could be.
That came up, they were like, well, why not somebody just come back next year and like over ask? And we're like, well, then we'll come up with another equation.
Okay. Anything else from anyone else? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. You're doing double duty as well.
Item D is sole source contract with Gelada Case Management Software. We learned a little bit about it at the Board of Health.
Yes, perfect. Good morning again, Commissioners. Ben Miller, Todd, Director of Emergency Services. The sole source contract with Gelada is intended and is in the motion to connect between a HIPAA-compliant environment that connects EMS to resources both at Catholic Community Services and other public health components. This software helps to facilitate the movement in a secure environment of patient records in a non-traditional format. EMS has a very robust communication process with the ER, but we're looking to resource and get those records out to others. This is that software. It is a sole source since the county already holds a contract with HCA, with public health, between public health and HCA. And in that contract, it does stipulate that all lead programs must use Gelada. In that case, it is a business use case for the county to continue to use the same case management software.
Yeah, that's an important piece of that. Any other questions for Ben? Okay, thank you. Item E, sole source purchase of controlled substances safes, narcotics safes.
Yes, Thurston County is looking to update its medic unit fleet throughout the year and into next year. With that update in fleets, there's also an upgrade in technologies that we need to address. Making sure that our controlled substances are secure throughout Thurston County is a high priority for EMS, especially in the more ruggedized and pre-hospital environment. And with that, these safes will allow us to have an entirely integrated software and hardware solution that allows for dual factor authentication or two-person authentication. I'm very cognizant that the IT director is sitting over my shoulder, and it's two-person authentication and access into these safes. So it is more secure in terms of the redundancy in individuals. It also places it in an electronic environment. Right now, we are recording a lot of our safe in a DEA compliant practice, but on paper. It moves it into an electronic format and allows us to do all RFID tracking for all of our Schedule 2, 3, and 4 medications that we carry, which means we have real-time tracking when they are placed in the safe and out of the safe, both from the headquarters safe and on all of our rigs throughout Thurston County. You would think that there are a lot of safes that meet these stipulations, and this shouldn't be a sole source, it should be an RFP. But we actually worked through the process, whittled it down to 2 vendors, and the last one, out of 30 vendors, the last one that was potentially compliant actually had a separate software that you had to purchase outside of the fully integrated component that we had stipulated needed to be in place. And that's what produces the sole source in front of you today.
And this is money coming from?
This is Medic One levy funds, yes. Both of these are through Medic One levy funds.
Any questions for Ben? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item F, resolution to adopt new classification, water and sewer engineering and operations manager.
Good morning again, Maria Ponte, HR Director. This is a simple request from Public Works. They're requesting a new classification. It currently does not exist. It's titled Water and Sewer Engineering and Operations Manager. And the purpose of the job is to help manage the statutory requirements of the county-managed water and sewer utilities and improve support of the utility operations team. And that's it in a nutshell. We're just creating a new job description.
Questions on the HR item? Thank you. Item G, grant amendment for the Lost Lake Community On-Site Sewage System Improvement Project.
Good morning, Jen Freiheit, Director of Public Health and Social Services. This is an amendment to approve the grant agreement for the Department of Ecology Lost Lake On-Site Sewage grant, and I will turn it over to Susan Long.
Susan Long, Environmental Division Director. Yep, this will increase the eligible cost of this grant by $30,000 to do pumping and maintenance of the septic systems while we're doing the replacement project.
Questions? No?
Thank you.
H, master contracts for furnishing and supply of various asphalt materials. We just did this one.
We just did the call for sealed bids for this one. Now we're back to award this contract.
Okay.
So Public Works is requesting the Board of County Commissioners award 3 master contracts to Granite Construction, Lakeside Industries, and Miles Resources for supplying various types of asphalt to Public Works to perform our roadway maintenance. These contracts are in response to a call for sealed bids, which was approved by the Board of County Commissioners. Public Works will determine which vendor to use on a case-by-case basis based upon the lowest price after evaluating the cost of materials and travel from the work area to the pickup point.
Questions on the asphalt material contracts? Next up is request for proposals for an analytical laboratory testing services contract. Solid waste.
Commissioners, Jeff Bickford, Solid Waste Manager. As you know, out at the Waste and Recovery Center, we have an old closed landfill there that we have to continue to monitor. So we have to monitor our leachate, our stormwater, our landfill gas, et cetera, under our permits for ecology. So we are requesting the board allow us to put out a request for proposals for laboratory work to do the analysis on the samples that we take. So it's estimated, we're looking for potentially a 5-year or up to 5-year agreement with an initial term of 1 year with 4 potential renewals with a total potential cost of about $500,000 over those 5 years. So again, our request is to allow us to put out a request for proposals.
Is that the same structure we've used in the the current contract?
Correct. And we have a current contractor that's working on it, but they haven't been doing a good job. So we instead of continuing to renew, we're pulling that one and then putting this back out again.
And they can bid if they want, but they've got.
Might not, yeah, you can't.
Okay, any questions on this one? Important stuff. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Voucher list for March 3rd. Commissioners will see that and have a chance to ask questions before next week's meeting. Commissioner reports. And we have a public hearing on the proposed ordinance adjusting composition of the Board of Health. And I think we're well familiar with that. Are there any questions for Dr. Freiheit on the public hearing on Board of Health composition? Nothing new there, just the same.
Yep, moving forward on the same plan to, which has the South County representative and yeah.
Can you remind us, so if let's say that let's say we got positive comment or no comment and the board took action, fairly short order, when would we be making those changes?
And that's what I'm seeking legal opinion on now, because once the BOCC approves that, I don't know if it has to be another approval at the BOH level or not. So finding that out, but it could be at the next Board of Health meeting.
But then, once it's approved through the legislative process, is it going to immediate effect?
That's what I don't know. That's what I don't know if then the Board of Health has to make
But
a
I
motion
mean,
and
once
approve
the Board of
something.
Health.
Right, then it could be an immediate effect.
It's not, I just couldn't remember where we landed on like phasing it in or.
There was discussion to phase in, and so we'll circle back on that conversation just so that some of the members don't give information.
The effective date is September 1, 2025.
Okay, that's what I was just I'd forgotten.
Yeah.
So we've had time to like get their person from South County lined up and et
Yes.
cetera. Okay, sounds good. Thank you, no questions? All right, that takes care of the first review of March 25th board meeting. So next up is advisory boards.
Commissioners, we have two applicants to review today for the Citizens Commission on salaries for elected officials. We've received one application from Kent Markley and one from Rochelle Martin. Both are eligible for appointment to the organized labor seat.
Is it one seat where that's open or?
There are two seats open, the organized labor representative and the legal professional representative.
Commissioner Mejia?
Thank you. I would like a little bit more time. I've also got contacted last week about someone interested in applying, and so just the fact that we're passing the new kind of adaptation of the salary commission, I believe that gives us time to do a recruitment and push that out and see if we get more applications in. So for me, I'm not ready to move forward yet on these two applications. And then kind of on a separate note, I would like to discuss, and I'm not sure when we could have the discussion in terms of the salary commission, just based on our budget outlook this year. Like, I would like for the board to send a letter to our salary commission stating that we won't do raises, to not consider raises, just because I just don't think it would be appropriate. But knowing that this is not but just, I guess, just throwing that out there, it is something that I am interested in sending to the salary commission.
Seems fair to me. I think with the new matrix would be, or the new labels or flavors, that's not a bad idea. And I do think, while we're eliminating the legal professional requirement, I do think that it's still important to have a diversity of ideas and opinions. And so kind of like eliminating one and then doubling the amount of organized labor representatives. I don't know if that's something that we would want to talk about first. I'm not saying that's bad or good. It would just be something we would want to converse about.
Just so I'm clear, so that right now there's a labor and a legal. but we're changing the ordinance, so those are both gonna become, there's two spots that are now gonna become flexible for either one, because the two applicants are both labor. So if we weren't changing the ordinance, they couldn't both serve, one would have to be selected.
Correct.
But because we're changing it, they could in theory be both selected, but we're gonna open it up for a little bit longer since the classification's changing. Correct. Commissioner Claus?
I was wondering when these applications came in.
Yes, as shared in the email, the first application for Kent Markley was received in November. The second application was received late February. We have reached out to both applicants and informed them of the pause that was in place due to the changes in the salary commission ordinance.
HR and the clerk thought that those changes were going to happen pretty fast, like we could get them done before the end of the calendar year. But the review process and legal review took longer than anticipated, and I understand everyone's busy, so that's not a negative in any way. So we apologize for the delay bringing this forward, and apologize for not having that information ready at the last conversation when this came up.
Yeah, no, if we had one submitted late February, that's not too long, but the one that's been sitting since November, let's see, if we're approving the new ordinance today, or is that on next week's agenda?
Today.
Okay. I know, I don't have any problem waiting on these. We have another board meeting next week. I'd like to get whoever we're gonna appoint on board as soon as possible, since we've had these issues with quorum and we've been waiting to fill these positions. And since one's been sitting here since November, I think that it'd be good to get these vacancies filled, especially since we've talked about how difficult it's been to fill them. If we've had one person waiting since November, you reached out, are they still even interested?
I believe so.
Okay.
I haven't heard back.
Oh, okay,
Response.
okay.
And to make one correction to what I just said, the item to set the public hearing is on the agenda for today.
Oh, okay.
The public hearing will be set for April 15th.
Oh, so then we wouldn't be able to actually implement the new ordinance until after April 15th?
Correct.
So could we appoint one under that category of organized labor and then hold off on the second appointment until the ordinance is implemented and the changes are made?
I'm just seeing these for the first time, and I know one of the people, and the other one I don't, but I guess I'd like a little more time. I mean, I don't know where I stand on Commissioner Mejia's proposal about a letter to the Salary Commission, but if that were to be passed, then the timing of this becomes far less of concern. If the board's gonna send a letter saying don't do any salary increases.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I guess I would like a little more time myself as well.
I'm with you on that.
Okay, so it sounds like, Commissioner Grant, did you have anything to add? We can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Looked like you came off mute, but we're not hearing you. Okay. She's okay, okay with a short delay or not taking? Okay,
Yeah, she's okay with the delay.
okay. Then let's bring this back for further consideration.
The only thing I want to ask about is Commissioner Mejia mentioned the recruitment. Is that something in the delay that you're interested in? I didn't hear that being discussed.
Well, anyone can always apply. So if she's heard from somebody, they can get an application in, and we don't like cut off, like, oh, I'm not considering that one because the date's passed. So, I mean, if you mean like going out and putting social media campaign stuff, that's, I guess, the question, but.
That's what we mean. We just mean that the clerk can take a much more active role in getting the word out, see if anyone's interested, and if the board would like, we can do that since it's not gonna come back till April 15th.
I think it makes sense just because we're reclassifying the position. You may get interest from a quarter you didn't think you know.
Sure.
So I don't see any reason not to do what we kind of would normally do. to, when we've got an open position, because we're creating new slots.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
So we have concurrence on that.
And then can I also ask for direction on a future item on the agenda for a letter for the salary commission?
Yeah, I think that's more than appropriate. I've been waiting to hopefully get to that point for a while.
I can add it to the point of discussion for next week. We can have that conversation.
Perfect, thank you.
Advertise it for next week.
Okay.
Okay, is there a third, I guess I'm in agreement to put it on for discussion. So we have 5 commissioners willing to have that item agendized. And then, what else do we need to cover, Madam Clerk, regarding the boards and commissions?
I just a note that we are working still with the applicants to schedule the interviews for the Timberland Regional Library.
How many applicants do we have?
We had about 7.
Excellent.
Yeah. So we'll
Okay,
get
so
those
that's
coming
on,
up.
that's gonna be coming up.
Yes, next few weeks.
Any other questions for the clerk on boards and commissions? Okay, then we go on to commissioner items. First up is countywide planning policies, tribal coordination. Ashley had said 10 o'clock, so we're a couple minutes ahead. Are you guys ready to go?
I think so, we've got Allison up there.
Okay, we're ready.
Quick question, can you hear me now?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Good morning again, commissioners. This will hopefully be a brief briefing, just to give you an overview of countywide planning policies and the updates being made for tribal coordination. We are being joined by, there she is, Allison Osterberg, Planning Manager with Thurston Regional Planning Council. Before we dive into the details, just a quick review of what countywide planning policies are. They are the regional coordination policies that identify how we collaborate with our jurisdictional partners. So that includes all the North County cities as well as our South County cities. And so this policy framework establishes how we conduct our buildable lands inventory, how we change or update our urban growth areas, as well as how we coordinate with our partners, which will now include tribes.
So it's not just county government, it's all the governments coming together.
Mm-hmm. Which is why we have Thurston Regional Planning Council here. We do have a little PowerPoint slide that we'll bring up. Just give us a second. These do not get updated very often since since the origination of them. I think they've been updated maybe twice. And so this is an important update, especially as we're inviting new partners to the table for regional coordination. And for all those, sorry, I'm just gonna keep talking while they're bringing up the PowerPoint. For anyone listening at home, the board did make a decision to go ahead and postpone any updates related to urban growth area swaps until after rulemaking is complete at the state, and that is still underway. Okay. Clicker. No, it has the right slides. It was, I think that's. There you go, slides. Because they could see the slides. Sorry. That's weird. Skipping the second slide. That's okay. We can skip the second slide. It was just a bubble chart that showed our timeline and how we got here, starting with.
It's in the packet.
It's in the packet, thank you. So basically starting off with the process for updating countywide planning policies. And this afternoon will be the end of that process with Thurston County Board of County Commissioners go ahead and adopting them. I'm gonna turn it over to Allison since she was engaged in more of this process than we were. And of course, we're here to answer questions. Allison, do you want to go ahead and take the lead on presenting the history, the 2 years of review that have occurred leading up to this day?
Sure. Good morning, Commissioners. Allison Osterberg. I'm the Planning Manager at Thurston Regional Planning Council, and very pleased to be seeing the progress on these updates to the countywide planning policies around tribal coordination, which we've been working with partners across the region to bring to this point for the last couple of years. And so the background on this is that this change to the countywide planning policies was sparked because of a change to state law that specifically, and you'll have heard a little bit about it in the context of requiring additional tribal coordination around comprehensive plans. The countywide planning policies also guide how we coordinate around comprehensive plans primarily, but those changes to state law specifically called out that the countywide planning policies themselves needed to talk about this tribal coordination. And so that's really what sparked the review needing to address that. So when we learned about the law, read the law at TRPC, and flagged this with our jurisdictional partners that this was a change we felt like would need to be made to the countywide planning policies. We worked with tribal staff to develop some initial changes to the countywide planning policies to incorporate it into a few places we thought was logical. We brought that to the Urban Growth Management Subcommittee, which is a subcommittee of Thurston Regional Planning Council, and it includes representation from all of the jurisdictions within Thurston County. And one of the things that they do, the Urban Growth Management Subcommittee needs to review and make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners on any changes to the countywide planning policies. So we brought those initial amendments to that subcommittee. They requested that the planning directors of the region take another look at those requirements and draft a recommendation. The planning directors did some more. We brought them together, we looked at the changes, solicited some additional review from different tribal partners, circulated that again, and brought it back to the UGM subcommittee. And the subcommittee at that time requested a little additional time to review. And so eventually we kind of went back and forth, but in mid 2024, the UGM subcommittee made a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. You have held your public hearing, which is the next step on those changes, and received, from what I heard, pretty good support for the tribal coordination changes, and are ready to move ahead with adopting those changes. So the work that we did when we were developing the changes is we did work with tribal staff from the Squaxin Island tribe, the Nisqually Indian tribe, the Confederated Tribes of the Chehalis. We also worked with the Department of Commerce's tribal liaison, who had worked on the original kind of guidance around those changes to state law. And we had also worked with the Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission to see if they had any other input, and had reached out to other tribal staff just to see what they preferred. So that's really where the changes, the language that we see in the countywide planning policies came from. Go ahead. So as I mentioned, these updates are driven by a change to law, which is outlined there, and it was HB 1717. That dates back to 2022, and the new requirements are really that the countywide planning policies include policies that address the protection of tribal cultural resources. And that means that jurisdictions in developing their comprehensive plans need to consider tribal cultural resources and collaborate with tribes. And another change is in the composition to the countywide planning policies themselves. It said that the law said that federal agencies and federally recognized Indian tribes with reservations or ceded lands within the county shall be invited to the countywide planning policy update process. Next slide. So the changes that are in the countywide planning policies includes defining what we mean by tribes, and that we included that in the preamble description for the countywide planning policies to be clear who's included. And then in section 1 in the general policies, we make it more explicit that there's a requirement to collaborate with tribes. We recognize tribal sovereignty and tribal governmental authority, and that all the jurisdictions in Thurston County agree to that there is a need to cooperate when planning around utilities, transportation, and economic development. There's a small change in section 10, which talks about environmental quality. It was a request from one of our tribal partners that we clarify. I think we have a policy just talking about water quality, and wanted to clarify that that includes rivers and creeks, fish habitat, and passage. And then the other section that was amended is section 11, which talks about how the countywide planning policies themselves are developed. And we explicitly amend that policy to make it explicit that tribes are members of the Urban Growth Management Subcommittee going forward. So that's a summary of the changes that are in front of you for adopting today. And what I'll note around implementation is that the Urban Growth Management Subcommittee, when we went through this process of developing, recognized that while at the time tribes were not represented on the UGM subcommittee, we went ahead and the subcommittee agreed that tribes should be part of that process. So tribe representation from the Chehalis tribe, Nisqually Indian tribe, and Squaxin Island tribe all were invited to participate. It's on the Urban Growth Management Subcommittee, especially for the discussions around the tribal coordination changes. And that's something we would perpetuate in the future with these changes in place. And that I'll hand it back to Ashley for anything else you guys want to talk about.
Thank you, Allison. Any questions?
Commissioner Klaus?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for coming here today. Like, the fact that we were able to coordinate this and get you all here before the vote and the morning of the day where we have the vote on our agenda, I just really appreciate that. It was important to me to have a group setting where we can kind of hear what these changes look like in the history, and so I just really appreciate you doing that. As far as questions on the PowerPoint itself, I'm kind of wondering what the next steps look like. So we'll implement this through the vote today, and then Allison mentioned a couple of the new requirements in place by passing this amendment, and I'm wondering, what does the timeline look like for making sure that we recruit tribal members to the UGM subcommittee and some of the other changes that were mentioned?
It's a great question, and so I'll speak to the UGM subcommittee. I would say there isn't anything specific or a timeline that we need to do it on, because we've already taken the major action, which would be inviting tribal representation on the UGM subcommittee. So the UGM subcommittee is a subcommittee of TRPC, which includes representation from many different entities across Thurston County, including the Nisqually Indian tribe and the Confederated Tribes of the Chehalis. And the Squaxin Island tribe has been invited to join, but as yet hasn't decided on their representation on that group. And so we work through our TRPC members, tribal members, to identify folks to participate on the UGM subcommittee, and then made special outreach to the Squaxin Island tribe to let them know that they are invited to participate on the UGM subcommittee. So the steps have already been taken just now, because we recognize that there had been that change in state law, and so that went ahead of the actual changes to the countywide planning policies. And so we would just, the next time that the UGM subcommittee doesn't meet regularly, it meets as needed, and as at the moment there isn't any action in front of the UGM subcommittee. But the next time something comes up that needs their review, we would be inviting tribal representatives to participate.
Commissioner Klaus,
So that's from our perspective. That's the implementation for that piece.
If you remember the comp plan changes that you had to vote on when you've been here like 2 weeks, that process involved the Chehalis tribe, who were participants over the summer in the UGM subcommittee and weighed in, and I remember kind of highlighting their input into the Grand Mound West and East decisions that we made. So they were part of that.
TRPC's been really proactive about reaching out and inviting tribal representation to the table ahead of formal action.
And in fact, we delayed the decision at one point because of that, because they hadn't, I can't remember what it was. I know there was a delay because they weren't able to attend, or they wanted to attend and hadn't got, like, we were very accommodating to making sure that was incorporated into the UGM decision-making. Allison probably remembers that better than me.
We went through a few rounds and definitely got really good buy-off from all our tribal partners on what they wanted to see included in this. What I'll say with the other changes to the countywide planning policies is there's no radical departures here from what we already do. It's really just enshrining, making more formal what I think all our jurisdictions across Thurston County already do, which is have pretty strong collaboration with the tribes in our region when it comes to planning. And so Thurston County, for example, is already in the habit of working with tribal partners when developing a comprehensive plan or sub-area plan amendments, things that are of interest to tribes. And so the language that's in the countywide planning policy isn't, I think, doesn't set up any radical changes from current practice in our region. It just, at the state level, they wanted to make sure that that was being formally a part of the practices, the way folks are collaborating.
Any other questions for the team on this change? Okay, yeah, thank you so much, Allison.
Thank you.
So next up, we'll try to finish out this piece of our agenda. It's
I don't know what that, I've never seen that before.
an executive session pursuant to RCW 4230-110-1A subsection 2 to consider if in compliance with any required data security breach disclosure under RCW 19-255-010 and 4256-590, and with legal counsel available, and I see Scott Cushing is here from Prosecuting Attorney's Office, information regarding the infrastructure and security of computer and telecommunications networks, security and service recovery plans, security risk assessments, security test results, to the extent they identify specific system vulnerabilities, and other information that, if made public, may increase the risk to confidentiality, integrity, or availability of agency security or to information technology infrastructure or assets. The topic to be addressed in this executive session is a cybersecurity audit. We're going to estimate 30 minutes for this. Board action may follow. It is now 10:10. We're going to be in.
Maybe we can start with 20 and then always extend 10 if that's okay.
Okay, we're going to revise that to 20, so it's 10:10. We're going to be in exec session until 10:30, and we'll extend that if we're not completed at that time. And I'll wait for Brandy to give me the confirmation. It's 10:40 a.m. We are out of our executive session and no board action is following. And so we're at the end of the business agenda this morning. We're adjourned till 2 p.m. for our regular board meeting. Thanks, everybody. Is there something else?
Well, Commissioner Fournier, you sent an email to the clerk about, and so she sent that out just before the meeting. I don't expect any of the commissioners to have reviewed it.
Yeah, I think just to let everybody know that I sent the email out.
Okay.
It was regarding Billy Frank Jr. Day, which was the 9th, so we missed it, which we can do like post, or we can do after the fact proclamations, but I'm just saying, hey, read it, and then I'd like it placed on the next agenda under commissioner items, and then we can talk about it openly then.
Perfect, okay.
Yep, just a heads up there.
Yep.
All right, thanks. We're done.
Good job with the meeting time.